Hey Siri, how do you pronounce the word Sirui as it relates to the lens manufacturing company?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
Sirui, 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 or Sirui? Or you can just let out a Sui. Either way, today I want to look at Sirui's Vision Primes, the lenses in question, the 35mm and the new 75mm. Now, Sirui did provide these lenses to me for free to review. However, I liked these lenses so much that I am actually going to be buying another couple to help me round out my set, and that is a direct reflection of how much these lenses impressed me. Now, when we talk about budget cinema lenses, the conversation often defaults to the Thypoc Chimera Cs or the Desio Vespids, and I feel like the Sirui VP1s have been somewhat excluded from the conversation. And I'll be honest, when these lenses were offered for review, I was not super excited. Aren't they too clean and too clinical? The kind of lens I am always rallying against? Well, I'm pleased to say I got it wrong. The Vision Primes are an excellent alternative and one that's kind of slept on. Well, never sleep again.
You shouldn't have buried me. I'm not dead.
This is not an overly technical review, but what's most important is that I did get the opportunity to use these in real-world shoot scenarios over a couple of my professional jobs, along with a few tests I did against my photography lenses and my Dulens cinema lens set. Now, I suppose the first criticism about the Sirui VP1s is just a lack of focal lengths, as they came out about a year ago with the 24, 35 and 50. Your typical focal lengths, but some might say your most boring focal lengths. And people were wanting something a little longer and a little wider.
That's what she said.
And thankfully, Sirui have addressed this with the release of 3 new focal lengths: the 75, which I have been using, the 16mm, and the rather curious but also rather interesting 150mm, which is the only lens in the new set which isn't a T1.4, but only goes down to T4. And look, I was very tempted to try that lens, but from a practical point of view, it's not something that I would use that often. So ultimately, I opted for the 75mm. So now we have a 16, 24, 35, 50, 75, and 150, which should satisfy pretty much everyone. Now, in terms of the look, I think it would be unfair to say that these are overly clinical, which is what personally surprised me. I love vintage lenses. I love lenses with character. However, while those lenses work for great narrative films and documentaries, for day-to-day client work, it's hard to convince producers they need to shoot on a 50-year-old lens with a green tint, swirly bokeh, and criminal amounts of chromatic aberration. It's just not really feasible. And to be honest, you're only introducing headaches to your shoots if you do so. So when you're looking for something that provides something clean and sharp, but also an obvious tier above stock standard photography lenses, this is where I think the VP1s really shine. And on the jobs I took them on, I was really impressed. You need your lenses to be sharp to know you've got critical focus, and you need your lenses to be clean because corporate clients aren't looking for lens fruitiness, as my cinematographer would say. That makes the VP1s perfect paired with something like the Nikon ZR shooting in that delicious R3D, and that is how I was using them. But I also think it would be unfair to say that these lenses don't have character. They do. It's just not weird character. I mean, it's a sharp suit and pink tie character, not casual Friday Hawaiian shirt character. But they definitely have a distinct cinema lens quality about them that none of my photography lenses have. Here's a few comparisons. First, let's look at these compared to my beloved Tamron 35 to 150 zoom at the same focal lengths of 35 and 75. Now let's look at the VP1s compared to my Dulens lenses. Now I don't have exact matching focal lengths as the Dulens has a 31 and an 85, but that's as close as we can get. Now officially speaking, Dulens have been designed to replicate a vintage look, so this is a good comparison to see just how different this vintage non-vintage really feels. The lens seemed pretty consistent to me across the two I'm testing. And let's talk the pros of the VP1s. As cinema lenses, as compared to some of the other offerings out there, firstly, they're cheaper than all the other cinema lenses on the market, looking at sort of $550 for the original set and $650 for the new set, I believe, which makes them significantly cheaper than any other cheap cinema lens. Secondly, they come with 4 different mounting options, with each lens E, Z, L, and RF mount. So if you have a mix of mirrorless cameras, you don't have to buy anything extra. These lenses will work across all of them. If you decide to flip-flop on a camera brand, these lenses don't become redundant. You can take them with you into your next camera system with no issues, which I love. As someone who owns both Z mount cameras and L mount cameras, I'm good. Now, initially, I was a little skeptical about how easy or time consuming it would be to swap out mounts. But you just need to remove 4 screws using the screwdriver that comes with each lens, and it honestly took me about 2 minutes. They come with spare screws, you can't mess this up, which means you could even feel confident enough doing a mount swap while out on a filming job. Really easy and straightforward to do, kind of a great engineering feat. Now, as previously mentioned, these are T1.4, which make them great for low light shooting or just blowing the F out of your background with that big bokeh feel. And because they are sharp at T1.4, that's completely usable, whereas many of the other lenses in this category would need you to stop them down a little bit. With the exception of the Thypox, which are T1.5, there's not another cinema lens with an f-stop this low until you get to something like the DZO R-less lenses, which are close to 4 times the price. So if you want to see big bokeh balls, man.
All I have in this world is my balls and my word, and I don't break them for no one.
In terms of their size, they are still on the small end when it comes to cinema lenses, making them a great complementary lens to the Nikon ZR. While they are longer than, say, my Dulens, by the time you stick a PL adapter on, they wind up actually being the same size and weight. And with the exception of the 150mm, I believe the VP1s are all uniform in terms of their gear rings and weight being pretty close to around 600 grams per lens, making them light, easy to swap out, and easy to run on gimbals. Another big win for these is their minimum close focus distance, something that I always struggle with when using my Dulens. The minimum focus distance on the 35 is only 30 centimeters, the 75 at 75 centimeters, which is more than respectable. The 24, it's 26 centimeters, and the 50 is 43 centimeters. And I love cinema lenses with a close minimum focus, as it just opens up so many more possibilities when it comes to framing without having to swap to another focal length. So this is very important for me personally. The focus breathing is also really minimal, as we can see in my tests, maybe the 75 a little bit more, but again, very solid results. No complaints. I really like the bokeh here. It seems very smooth, reminds me a bit of like Sigma bokeh, which I always thought was very pleasing. I think it does have a nice soft roll off between the focal plane, and I was genuinely quite surprised about how nice this looked. Smooth is definitely what I would call these lenses, with the way the background falls away at shallower depths of field. And one thing I wasn't expecting, and actually my favorite thing about these lenses, is that because they are quite contrasty and sharp, they definitely have a really nice 3D quality to the images. Yes, I'm talking about the elusive 3D pop. Overall, this pop is not something I was really expecting, and it was what immediately made me think of these as several tiers above my autofocusing photography lenses when testing. Because once you pop, you can't stop. We all know that. So when you think you've seen that 3D effect, you just want to see it more. But when we talk about clean and clinical, I also feel like this often comes with an absence of pop. Of course, maybe you don't believe in 3D pop. If so, I will direct you to Casey from Camera Conspiracy's channel for an ongoing 4-year discussion on the subject where he proves and then disproves his own theories with examples that seem to contradict themselves more often than not. Whether it is simply the contrast and detail that creates this effect along with the lighting setups in question, or these are big bopper 3D poppers, I'm a big fan of this look. In terms of sharpness, these lenses are sharp. And how sharp is too sharp? We'll put it this way. I feel like having some pro mist or glimmer glass or diffusion filters on the lenses are a bit of a prerequisite. I had the 1/8 black pro mist on for all of my work footage and only removed them for the side-by-side testing. However, that level of sharpness is valuable when filming clients who don't want to look like they're filmed through the bottom of a dirty glass, which some of my vintage lenses can sometimes feel like. Again, character is great, but the dentist down the road doesn't want character. He wants clean glass for his clean teeth. But no lens set is perfect. So let's talk about a few of the cons I found with these lenses. Now, first of all, these are only for mirrorless cameras. These are not PL mount lenses, which means, ironically, you can't actually use these cinema lenses with any real cinema cameras. I get that's not really the market Sirui are going for, but it's still a bit of a negative if you have one of those cinema cameras in your arsenal. It also means you can't use in-between adapters like the Poco MoFarge when thinking about how you want to cut light with these lenses. It also rules out the option of using these lenses on older Canon and Blackmagic cameras with EF mounts, which is also a shame. Secondly, you do see a bit of washout when pointing at direct lights, and I don't think the flaring on these lenses is particularly well controlled. My other gripe, and this is more of a personal preference, but I think the focus wheels aren't quite dampened enough. They're definitely not loose, but they just don't have quite enough friction when rotating for my tastes. There is also a little bit of chromatic aberration when at lower f-stops. It's not really something I notice on shoots, but it is there. And yes, these are clean lenses. If you don't like clean, then these lenses probably aren't for you. I don't think these lenses are boring. I don't really think they're even clinical like a set of Sigmas or Canons, but as someone who myself loves to introduce imperfections with my glass, these are definitely quite the opposite of what I normally favor. But as they say, cleanliness is next to godliness. And as far as Jay-Z once said, is it better to be overpaid or underrated? Because at the moment, I think these lenses are both underrated and you are underpaying for them, which makes them a particularly good deal, especially with the new focal lengths which are available. These lenses are legitimately affordable. You can buy 2 or 3 for the cost of a regular photography zoom lens or a more expensive cinema lens. They're at least a few $100s cheaper than their direct cheapest competition in the Cine-lens world, and they'll work with any mirrorless camera you own. That equals very impressive value for money. So for new filmmakers looking to get a set of cinema lenses without breaking the bank, to learn what focal lengths they like, to understand a bit more about lens language and finding a style that works for them, while also having the ability to shoot at t1.4 to avoid using lighting that they can't afford, this is the type of cinema lens set I would recommend. And if you're someone who wants to use this for bespoke corporate work, these also fit the bill perfectly. If you're interested, you can use my affiliate link in the description for a discount and help support me and the channel. Until next time, I am the Sirui Savage filmmaker, and I'll see you when I see you.